Hey, folks. Welcome to our first podcast, the inaugural podcast of Software Sales Simplified, Move to Success. I'm Kevin Donville, and next to me is my partner in crime and co-founder, Matt Long.
Hey
Matt,
everyone.
yeah. So Matt and I are going to kind of let you guys know a little bit about what the channel is all about, why we're here, and what you can expect going forward in the future. And so to start that, I think I'd like to ask Matt. And so Matt, how would you describe what are we trying to achieve with this podcast? What's our goal?
Well, I think the same things that we started the company with about a year ago was so that we can take our 25 years of experience each in software sales and use that experience to teach other people, not to do the things that we did, which I'm not sure how successful it's going to be. But I thought the podcast format would be great for that. As a way of just kind of getting the message out and introducing ourselves to people, as well as sharing some of our insights and experience from over the years.
Yeah, absolutely, and I concur very much. So for those of you that don't know Matt and I, we've been in this industry for a long, long time together, and just recently we found ourselves on the wrong end of a corporate resizing effort, and over the course of us sharing and interacting post separation from the company, we realized that there were a lot of people that were reaching out to us specifically with the challenge of trying to improve things like their pre-sales teams, making them better storytellers, taking them from being purely technical skill focused people where they excelled, and making them more into seasoned sellers where they were able to bring more of a consultative approach to the engagements that they were tasked with, and to become better storytellers, to be able to communicate better, to be able to work on establishing what the customer needs were much more efficiently, and using those as the groundwork and the focal point or the lattice work upon which to build things like a presentation or a demonstration.
Yeah, and I think a common thing that we heard from a lot of people is like, we got really smart people, but our demos are just boring. They're feature function, they're a
Yeah.
slog, they're not very compelling. um, you know, or as we started unpacking that, it's not just about the SEs not being able to tell stories or demo
Mm,
properly. A lot of times they didn't have good information going in to really tell a compelling story or anything differentiating or specific to the customer that was sitting in front of them.
right.
And so it starts going upstream then. We start realizing this is not just a demo problem. It's really a discovery problem. And really, taking that discovery, mapping it to value, and then using that to tell your story. So it really broadened, but it really started with, can you teach our guys how to do better demos,
Well,
right? And sometimes that's where it starts. I think that was kind of interesting as a way that we both got into it.
and it's funny that when people would come to us with that question, and we would start looking into it for them, right? We would have some interviews with some of the people that they were working for their organizations, and as we started talking to them, it really very quickly became evident this is not a presentation skills problem per se. There's a broader problem at work, whether
Yeah.
that's a discovery problem, it's a partnering issue, ownership issues within the structure of the sales teams. There were a lot of different moving parts that were all of them adding to this situation where the demos weren't compelling, they weren't landing, they weren't relevant, they weren't resonating with the people they were trying to sell to. And to your point earlier on about don't make the same mistakes we did, we've learned those things the hard way. And that kind of became our focal point for what we started working on together and how we went to market, and led ultimately to this podcast that we have here. So with that in mind, what do you think are some of the things we're going to end up talking about on this podcast over the next, hopefully, infinity of time?
Well, I think, going back to kind of the roots of this entire thing, it's all about storytelling. It's telling stories about what we've experienced or things that we happen to us, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes it for any compelling narrative that
Mm-hmm.
people want to listen to. And that's both on a podcast or when you're in front of a customer.
Right.
So hopefully we have a whole slew of things to pull from in the past. But I think the thing that's exciting for me about this is me being 25 years in the field, most of the time carrying a bag. Sometimes I was in a leadership position, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
both.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're carrying a bag, when you have a quota, all you care about is closing deals,
Right.
right? It's not, and when I could, I tried to share my experience and raise the entire team. But ultimately, I'm just trying to make money, right?
Right.
And the way I do that is I close my deals.
Mm-hmm.
So now that that's taken away, it's now an opportunity for me to really start sharing all these things with people and hopefully finding people that are interested in hearing about these things and helping to improve other people up their game as well.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. And it's one, so you and I have been doing this for a long time. So a little bit about our backgrounds. Uh, Matt and I started this journey. I worked for Matt at a software company. He took me out of the hardcore consulting world at Deloitte and Touche and gave me my first start in the world of being a pre-sales engineer. And that was, 24 years ago.
And you're still talking to me. Yes, sir.
You're still talking to me. That's the thing that's funny. It's like, it's funny because we are very different people. We've got a lot of similarities and common touch points in our background and the things that make up who we are. I find you a fascinating person, always have. And that's part of the reason why I think that you and I always found common ground together. And we were talking about this not too long ago. When it comes to any of these challenges we've been talking about, some of the ones you just brought up in your last comment, even though we may approach the fix to that problem or that challenge or that thing we need to overcome as a leader or an individual contributor on the team, we see the problem the same. And we
That's
often
right.
realize what the resolution needs to be. And the resolution is often common. We may come at it from different angles that reflect our different experiences and our strengths. But I think it's part of the reason why you and I have always gotten along famously at any of the projects that we've worked on.
Yeah, and I think the thing that always amazed me about you is that we both understand what good is and
Yeah.
what should be done. Now, how we get there might differ slightly, but we have the same goal in mind. We
Yeah.
we understand what a good presentation is, what good discovery is, what a good POC is,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we came to those from different backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
but that I think there's a real nice synergy there, and that's one thing I want to talk about too, because there's so many aspects of enterprise software sales. One is just the size of the deals and the amount of people involved and how long it takes, how
Yeah.
complex it is. There's just so much to consider.
Yeah.
And
For
any
sure.
one of those things that you miss could derail your entire deal. You're never going to catch everything. But
Right.
as we were kind of constructing what should we talk about and what should we train about and what our offerings would be. The thing that was interesting, everything down to like, how do you run a successful POC, right? That's hardly ever talked about, right? But that is a critical element of enterprise sales, and it's one where you spend a ton of time and resources
Right.
um, on. And we're both amazed going to different companies how much time and effort is spent on these things without really
Yeah.
thinking about what is the best approach and how do we optimize this and what's the most efficient way to run these things. So that's
Yeah.
just one
100%.
example of a small aspect of the sales cycle that we can focus on that I think is going to be interesting for people.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And it's because of the fact, as you said, we would sometimes find different avenues to get there because there's more than one way to get to where you want to go. Uh, but you need to know where you're going. That destination needs to be clear. And to your point, you need to know what good is. And how you want to execute to get there is often a reflection of the individual strengths and weaknesses of the organization you're operating within at that time. But there's certain ground rules or certain foundational elements of that. In our experience over the years, we've kind of learned what a lot of those elements are. And we've tried to bring those up both in things like the book, which we'll be talking about a little bit later on here, but also in all the different offerings that we have been coming up with under our organization. And whenever we talk to anybody, particularly someone who's a little bit less experienced or is struggling, or someone who's really seasoned but is struggling with a way to articulate it to their organization, it always strikes me how engaged people become once you start having this conversation about how do you actually execute to make these things happen.
Yeah, and I think that's, there's a lot of methodologies out there. I'm thinking of Medic because I've had that, brought in a couple times at places I've worked. Which
Yeah.
it's a great methodology. What it does though, it creates a common language that
Hmm.
people can talk about deals with,
Hmm.
right? So that when someone's saying something and someone's repeating it, parroting it, they actually mean the same thing because they've already defined what this word or what this term means. And I think that's what we also found, or what I found, is that when we're talking about things with other sales team members, whether it be newer AEs, we assume that they know what we're talking about when we're saying, "Did you do discovery? Have we mapped out the value? And do you have that in your presentation?" And they're like, "Yeah,
Right.
I do." And then you see the presentation; it's just the generic presentation from the company. It's like, no, this is not what I'm talking about, right?
Wait a minute. What happened to all that great stuff we talked about in the prep call? Where did it all go?
So I'm hoping along the way that we kind of, create a common language as well, so that when we meet, when we say certain things and stuff like that, you really understand what we're talking about. But that's really what it's all about, is you get to learn to work with people.
Mhm.
And my most successful times as a seller out there were when I had a good relationship with the AE or the delivery person, whomever, so they were all on the same page when we're tackling a strategy or how to pursue an account or an opportunity. We were all kind of lockstep in terms of what we were trying to do.
Yeah, and 100%. And the other thing that I've noticed, an interesting other kind of corollary or parallel to the circumstance and the situation you just described, is when you get people who are, let's use Meta because you brought that one up, whatever methodology it is you're going to be using, uh, they understand the process, they understand the mechanics, but they don't know how to actually apply that. They don't know how to work with the information it collects. So like they've collected it, they've gone through the steps of getting information, checking boxes, filling in fields. But then when you ask them to apply that to what they need to talk about and how they're going to engage the customer, it's like deer in the headlights. There's
Yeah.
been no consideration for how do you work with these wonderful bits of information have, these insights you have to the organization, their needs, their problems, their challenges. Nothing.
Yeah, I think that's what, and a little bit of your inner Canadian was sneaking out there, but
Yeah, it does every once in a while. I
you
apologize.
can't get rid of it completely.
I'm sorry.
Um, yeah, I think one of the things that was really interesting to me as we started talking through this was the fact that a lot of time and effort is done on how to do better discovery, how to value map, etc. But very little is done on the execution side. How do you actually execute on this once you have this information? Because as we said before when we were talking, a lot of times I see people have done good discovery and have
Yeah.
really good notes, but then it just all goes to the wayside when the execution starts on deal engagement,
Yeah.
and that's something that I think could be spent a lot of time on as well, and I think we'll do in these podcasts.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to having conversations. We got some fun stories. I know some of yours already, and I know you know some of mine. And I can't wait for us to bring other people on because we know a lot of folks. After 25 years in the industry, 30 if you count the stuff that we did before we got into pre-sales. We have other friends and other colleagues and professionals we
We
work
have
with.
friends, yes.
We have friends,
It's
believe it or
not going to be
not.
us talking the whole time, thank God. Um,
It would be horrifyingly
yeah,
boring.
for your sake and ours as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But we're going to be able to bring them in to add to that perspective. We'll hear some of the things they've talked about, things, challenges they've run into, creative ways they've gotten around those. And the one brilliant thing about this industry and the thing that's kept me doing this for so long is you never stop learning. You never stop having to reassess, reevaluate, and then prioritize and sometimes get rid of things that you thought worked in the past that no longer apply. They're no longer applicable or something new has replaced them. And it's always fresh and you're always in that constant state of never being sedentary. What you know never remains static.
Is that
You
why you
feel
started your TikTok sales channel? So,
point of order.
trying
I
to
do not
sell-
have a TikTok sales channel. Uh, Maybe we should have one. I don't know.
Maybe we need to stay relevant here. Well,
Yeah.
I know we don't want to keep this too long. Should we talk about the book a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So go give everybody what's the book about? Tell us, Matt. What is this wonderful book
It's,
that you have
let me
written,
let me
sir?
sum up. Let me sum up. As we were putting this thing together, in terms of what value we could provide to sales organizations and companies,
Mm,
and what format we would provide that in. A lot of it is training based, as well as just ad hoc consulting, as well as assessments,
hmm.
things like that. One thing that came to mind is like, I think we have enough things here for a book about how to sell to enterprises, right? It's slightly different than all the sales methodologies out there, which are still valid, and we work with them. But as we were coming up with this, you came up with the M and the O, the motive and opportunity, right?
Mm,
Almost like the CSI a bit, right? In terms
right,
of
exactly.
those types of things. And then as mapping to value. And so we had the acronym MOV, and it's like, well, we got to add an E on there. And what's the E? And all of a sudden it was like, the E is the engagement. That's the thing that's
Precisely.
missing, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the part where you can do all this pre work, but then if you don't know how to actually execute and apply it, it's of no value whatsoever. The book is called Winning Faster, the MOVE Framework for Enterprise Sales Success. And I would really feel like this is all the things that you need to consider as to successfully run campaigns in this very complex and long sales process with so many more competitors now,
Yeah.
and competing interests, not even competing technologies, but just competing priorities that
Hmm.
are happening across organizations. So that's how the book came about. And we've just finished it in all its forms and are releasing it. So we're going to be talking about that next week. But that's kind of how the book came about, and really excited about it. I think it's really good material that's going to be helpful for a lot of people to run better sales campaigns.
Yeah, it's so folks, as Matt said, we've finished it. It's now being released. We have a special promotion going on right now. You should see a link to being able to purchase that book in the description of this podcast down below. It will take you to a special page. We're doing pre-orders right now. If you purchase on the Kindle version of the book, you can purchase that pre-order for $3.99 or whatever the equivalent is in the jurisdiction you happen to be listening to this in. And there'll be other options available as well, PDF, electronic reader version, as well as hard copy for us folks that like to do it the old fashioned way and actually have physical medium in your hand to go and do the reading of the book. Again, the link to getting to that will be right down here in the description, or you can go to our homepage and get access to that. There'll be directions once you land there. It'll get you directly over to where you can purchase your own copy of our framework book. And we'll be talking more about that next week. And so, Matt, let me ask you from that perspective, what's the keenest thing you're looking forward to start talking about the book when we have our session next week?
Um, I think for me, I really enjoyed writing the preface to it in terms of how do we get here? Why is this coming about, and why is it relevant to you?
Mm,
And it was a way for me to kind of reflect on the past 25 years in terms of what my journey's been as a seller,
yeah,
right? And again, I wouldn't quite call it the hero's journey, but as we learn, as we talk about storytelling later, we know the hero's journey is a really critical, a way to kind of tell a story, right?
right.
Where you introduce something, and then you come into conflict, and then you overcome that, and you learn something, right? But that's kind of what it's been for me coming into it, from, being a trainer, uh, being in technology, but not really in the sales aspect. I was used to communicating the value of technology to people, but I didn't really know how to do that in a way that actually was maybe a good salesperson, right?
Mm,
I was a good technologist, and I was pretty engaging, but over the years, I've kind of learned how to actually become a better seller. And that's not by becoming more salesy, it's by becoming more curious about what people are trying to do and really understanding the landscape of what I could offer, what their needs were, what else was available, and being very consultative. So when I think about the book itself, there's all these different aspects of it, but all these things are part of what I've learned along the way, which is my own personal journey. So I think that's the most exciting thing to me. It has applicability to everyone who's on the same path,
Right.
but it's especially resonant to me because of the things that I had to go through to get to this point.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, to me, it's not even so much about becoming a better seller as it was becoming a better partner to the customer, and
Yeah,
really
absolutely. Yeah,
understanding what their challenge was, what the problem was, what the whole reason why we were talking to them in the first place, and helping them discover things that they didn't know about, potential roadblocks, potential threats that they weren't even aware of, both to the manifestation of whatever business challenge it was that made them want to go and look at these software solutions in the first place, but also the underlying problems and threats to their business they weren't always even fully aware of, or their ability to execute and actually deliver it. And they thought they were going to be able to go through, but yet they hadn't really taken into consideration what the burden potentially could be and the potential failure points of taking on a solution like that. And that partnering and helping them go through this journey of discovery, not only for our benefit so that we could, better tailor our solution to them, but for them to help them better understand the circumstances they were in so they could be more successful, hopefully with our solution, but in some cases, maybe not initially following through with the project the way they originally saw it. It's led to friendships and partnerships that I've had with people that I've sold to for years. I still have people reaching out to me that, I sold to 10, 15 years ago, and they still remain in contact with me because they consider me a trusted advisor. And that's the kind of money. And I know you've had similar experiences. It's there. That is such an honor to have with these people. And I'm always, deeply humbled by the fact that they hold us in that kind of regard. And we'll get more into that about how this methodology can help facilitate that with the people that you're selling to. We wanted to keep our first session kind of quick. Want to tell everybody about why we're here, what to expect when they come onto the call. Hopefully we've told them about why we're here, what we're doing, and what we hope to do, and a little bit about the book that we're going to be releasing here and how they can really get into the details about what the material is we're going to be talking about. So hopefully you guys want to come in and listen to us banter for the time that we're here and find that to be interesting. So, Matt, anything you wanted to close with?
No, I'm really excited to start this, and hopefully it'll get a little crisper and remain interesting throughout the life of the podcast. But thanks for joining us on this session right now, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right. So now that we're going to go and close up for this particular podcast, make sure to come back, subscribe, so you can go back and see us again. We'd like to hear from you. Please reach out to us on the website. Contact us if you would like to know more about what it is we do and the services that we offer. If you have any questions, by all means, reach out to us that way as well. We'd love to hear from you and hopefully even discuss some of those questions that you guys have on future podcasts. So now I guess we go to the legal minutia at the end of the call now. Thank you for tuning into Software Sales Simplified, Move to Success. This podcast was produced by and is the sole property of Strategic Sales Optimization, LLC, copyright 2024. Reproduction or use of any part of this broadcast in whole or in part without the expressed written permission of Strategic Sales, LLC is strictly prohibited, all rights reserved. Hope to see you guys here next time. Watch for our next episode, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Take care.